welcome to Planted in the Word. This is week 39, and as you can already tell, this week looks a little different because this week I want it to feel a little different. Something happened this morning as I was preparing to record this week's video, and it's just the authenticity of studying the Word of the Lord, and I wanted to share it with you because sometimes it's not polished and sometimes it's not very well presented, but the reality is that God comes and speaks to us in the moment of where we're sitting. And where I was sitting when the Lord connected all the dots for me this morning was right here. I'm sitting at my kitchen table, and behind me is my completely covered in the Bible studies I'm currently working on folders, and behind me is fall. And the reality is, I was sitting here and I was preparing week 39's notes so that I could go into the room that I use as a studio and record for you the connection between the Old Testament and the New Testament, because this week what you were going to be doing is finishing out 39 weeks of reading the Old Testament, and that really is a great thing if you've been following along with us chronologically. And next week you're going to begin week 40. So I jokingly laugh with people and say, if you're going to read through the Bible chronologically and you start in January, you're not going to get any Jesus till the 1st of October, which is true. Week 40, if it falls in the calendar starting in January, that's where it lands. But you can start your reading through the Bible any place. But this week's video was to be on the connecting of the dots between the Old Testament and the New Testament. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go through my notes as I have them written, and then I'm going to show you and go back and talk to you about revelation. Meaning that a lot of times the things that I share with you are knowledge, hoping to bring understanding. But the reality is what I really want is revelation. And revelation isn't a quick process. Sometimes you have to have a lot of knowledge and then a lot of understanding. And then you ask the Lord questions, and then poof, one day he gives you revelation. And that's what happened for me this morning. So first, let me give you the lesson as it was prepared this morning, and then I'm going to go back and give you the revelation and the gift that the Lord gave me, because who doesn't appreciate that, right? So let's talk about this last week, week 39 that you're getting ready to read. It's the ends of all the Old Testament. The exiles are returning. We have the temple being rebuilt in Ezra. We have the walls being reestablished in Nehemiah. And we end up, if you're reading our Bible in English, the last book is Malachi. If you're reading in a Tanakh, your last book's going to be 2 Chronicles. But we're going to go ahead and we're going to consider that you're reading with us, and it's Malachi, and Malachi is the end of the Old Testament and the beginning of the New Testament. What does that mean? Well, really nothing. If the Bible is an uninterrupted story, a consistent storyline that all leads to Jesus, it doesn't mean anything. But what we do need to recognize is that between Malachi and Matthew, we have approximately 350 to 400 years. And that's referred to by scholars as the intertestamental period. Now, Esther probably comes in there, but the other things that come in there are the Maccabees and Hanukkah. Those are the things that occurred in between about 400 BC and about 33 AD. Now, the other thing that happened, that period of time is sometimes referred to as the Hellenistic period, which is the period between Alexander the Great and the rise of Rome. So all those will give you a frame of reference for the period of time that we're talking about. But scripturally, there is some interesting things that happen that tie Malachi to Matthew. And one of the things that I was going to talk about is there was a study that I started some years ago, and I was learning the difference between the tzitzit and the Kanaph. So in Malachi 4:2, there's a verse that says, "For you who fear," or revere, that word could be, "my name, The Son of Righteousness will rise with healing in his wings, and you will go forth and skip about like the calves from the stall. Now, what I want to zoom in on and focus on is that phrase, healing in its wings. That wings word is a really interesting word. It's the word Kanaph in Hebrew. And one of the places we see that first occur is back when the Lord was giving directions to the priests about the prayer shawls that they were to wear. Now, I happen to have a prayer shawl I got in Israel, and so I'm going to show you. This right here is called a tzitzit, T-Z-I-T-Z-I-T, tzitzit. And this is the tassel that is worn on the corner of a prayer shawl. Now, depending upon the Jewish sect, these will be tied differently. They will look different, but they're supposed to have a blue cord. And these are the knots that the Jews will pray, and it's attached to the corner of their prayer shawl. Now, the word Kanaph means two things. Healing in his wings, it literally means wings. Like in Psalm 91:4, he will cover you with his pinions, and under his wings you may seek refuge. That is the word Kanaph. But Kanaph also means corner. So this right here, where the tzitzit is strung through, is the Kanaph of a prayer shawl. So these are the things that I've been studying. I was studying for a long time this tzitzit and this Kanaph, and specifically the Kanaph as it translates and ties us from Malachi and the promise of the Son of Righteousness coming to Matthew, and specifically Matthew 9, where these same words, though Matthew is written in Greek, I know, but if you will look up in your Strongs, it will tie these two together, letting you know the Hebrew word here would have been tzitzit. And the tzitzit is always tied on the Kanaph of a prayer shawl. So let me read Matthew 9 to you, and that is where the woman who has the issue of blood comes to Jesus. And it says, and the woman who had been suffering from a hemorrhage for 12 years came up behind him and touched the hem of his robe. That word there is the tzitzit word. She touched the fringe of his garment. She touched the tzitzit on the Kanaph of his robe. And what happens to this woman? She's healed. Jesus feels the healing go out of his body. Now, there's a lot of things that we could talk about. The faith of the woman, the absolute, all the rules and laws that she broke, reaching out to do that. But that's not where I want to stand. My whole goal in today's video was to tie together to you the understanding that Malachi 4 was talking about Matthew 9. The Son of Righteousness will rise with healing in his wings is the exact same thing that happens in Matthew 9 when the woman reaches out and touches the wing of his robe, the fringe of his garment, and is healed. We have the actual fulfillment of the prophecy in the very next book. And you will be reading that next week in week 41. And that's where I wanted to land today. Except that isn't what the Lord had in mind. And so I'm going to try and not tear up, because I do have these pieces of knowledge. And then every once in a while, the Lord shows me something, or I ask a question and God is faithful to answer. So a few weeks ago, we were talking about archaeological evidence for Hezekiah. And one of the things that I love is the bullet that I showed you that says Lamelech, to the king, and it mentions Hezekiah's name. And that is archaeological evidence that he lived. And we all know from having read our scriptures, he was an absolutely dedicated to Yahweh. He was a righteous man. And God acknowledged his righteousness, and the way he lived his life was such an excellent example of coming before the Lord and submitting, that it always sort of bothered me that on that same bulla, is a pagan symbol. And when I was doing that video, I was asking the Lord, why does this righteous man have a pagan symbol that he marked all the taxes that came to him with? It occurred to me today that when the Lord attached all of these pearls together and strung them into a necklace, that I had missed a very significant point. Malachi 4 states that the Son of Righteousness will come with healing in his wings. One of the things that's interesting about that is that the Son is not S-U-N. I'm sorry, it's not S-O-N, it's S-U-N. Now, I know that the ancients equated heavenly beings with the heavenly realm. In other words, our sun and moon and stars were to them equal with the Elohim. They were one and the same. They put those together. Now, what I want to present before you is that the S-U-N that occurs on Hezekiah's bulla is most likely a picture of Messiah. It's the sun with wings. And Malachi says that the Son of Righteousness will rise with healing in his wings. And Matthew tells us that that is Messiah, that is Jesus, who touches just his garment has healing in it. So there we string together all three pearls and we understand what was on Hezekiah's seal. It was a picture of the promised one, the Son of Righteousness. And when that hit me, I just couldn't stop crying, because this question I asked the Lord, he is faithful to answer. And that is one of the reasons why we study. I hope this encourages you. Congratulations with finishing your Old Testament. I encourage you to continue the last 12 weeks as we finish up the new. I hope this brings you, like me, enlightenment and touches your heart. Thanks for going on this journey with me. Have a good day.